Hello and welcome to episode 54 of the Legal Genie podcast with me, your host, Lara Quie. Today, I'm having a follow-up conversation with Lewis McDonald, co-head of the global energy practice at HSF Kramer, based in London. With over 20 years of experience advising on major energy projects across the world, Lewis has worked across the entire energy value chain, from upstream oil and gas and LNG to power and renewables in both developed and emerging markets. His career has taken him from Perth to Hong Kong, Singapore, Seoul, Tokyo, and back to London, where he continues to lead market-shaping deals and build high-performing teams. Lewis spent more than a decade in Asia helping to establish HSF Kramer's market-leading practices in Southeast Asia and Korea, and he's consistently ranked as a top-tier energy and projects lawyer by leading legal directories. I'm delighted to welcome Lewis back to the Legal Genie podcast 5 years after our very first conversation, to reflect on his journey since 2020 and explore what's next in the energy sector and beyond. Welcome back to the show, Lewis. It's so exciting to have you back.
Thank you very much, Lara. I'm sitting in Vence, just outside of Nice, and I'm in an old medieval area, and it's great to be back on your show, Lara.
Well, I had a little look at what we had first corresponded that time I reached out, and it said, "Hi, Lewis. Loved your Christmas song. I see you have extensive experience across APAC. I'm writing a white paper in lawyer happiness, and I have a podcast. It would be great to interview you. Merry Christmas, best wishes, Lara." And you immediately wrote back. You said, "Hi, Lara. That sounds interesting. I'd be happy to discuss further." And the rest is history. We jumped on a Zoom and we pressed record. So it's really fun that we managed to bump into each other recently, totally unexpectedly, and reconnect. And so here we are.
I know. Thanks to Simon Marshall and his Linked Influencers program. Yeah, that was a great event he hosted recently. And it was nice to get, I think, all those people in a room, face to face, a great panel. It's always interesting, isn't it, when you bring these virtual relationships to life? And I think that's really what we've been doing, isn't it, over these last few years? People we met during the pandemic, if you like, online, we've been able to, connect in real life, and it's been wonderful. It was really amazing seeing you actually for the first time in real life, because we had that experience all those years ago on this format, and it was like seeing an old friend, wasn't it? It's kind of incredible actually what the mind does before you've met in real life. It seems to think that you already know each other, in that way before you even connect. So yeah, interesting experience, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it so demonstrates, as you say, the power of LinkedIn, how you're able to bring those connections into real life. And yes, it was so much fun to just bump into you like that. I was very, very surprised and unexpected. Let's start with an overview of what you've been up to over the past 5 years, your practice here, and anything that has changed in your life since then.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so over the last 5 years, I think probably I was so enthusiastic to speak to you that time ago, because if you remember, that was deep into the pandemic. I was in the UK, I still am. You were in Singapore, and I think we're all having a very tough time. And so I probably was jumping on those sorts of opportunities, especially because I'm quite an extrovert as a person. And so the chance to talk about a subject that I'm interested in that kind of format, and thinking that people might listen to it and get something out of it, that was a nice thing to do. And then, it came out well. I think the stuff we talked about ikigai and things like that, and I think it came out well, and people probably did get something out of it. But yeah, so since then, that's roughly 5 years ago, basically. Wow, hasn't the world changed a lot in that time? Because the pandemic, it just definitely brought about a change in state in so many ways. I think awareness of climate change built a lot over that period, and people's ideas of what can be done to address climate change definitely evolved. The idea that by changing our energy system, we can deal with the problem, that definitely has taken hold. You could say the energy system and those behind it have had the finger pointed at them, really, for the effects of climate change. And so many companies in that space, I suppose, have taken that on board and have been looking pretty deeply at what can be done about it. And it's definitely affected capital flows and things like that. But of course, we've also had, a number of wars around the world that some of which are still ongoing. So, Russia invading Ukraine and Israel doing what they're doing in Palestine, et cetera, et cetera. So that's changing dynamics. That has an impact on the work that I do, particularly, what's happened between Russia and Ukraine, because the gas coming out of Russia has been one of the major sources of energy for Europe as a whole. Now, of course, Europe's dealing with that. They're replacing those sources, but that has a knock-on effect everywhere because then someone else has to compete for other types of energy. So that's having a huge impact as well. So, I mean, basically in my work over the last 5 years or so, there's been a massive shift in the work that we do towards helping with new energy technologies, the energy transition, that kind of thing. So the work's fundamentally changed. And there's been a lot of questions asked, I suppose, about the continually doing oil and gas related work over that period. Maybe I'll stop there, Lara, and you can ask a question.
Well, thinking about all of these renewables, and you only have to go anywhere, even in the UK, to see all of these massive wind farms and things like that. What do you think specifically about the UK and the energy that we rely on, and what are we doing here?
Yeah, the UK has really stepped forward. The UK has quite a strong vision in relation to the energy system and how it can change to address the climate change problem, if you like. The UK was the first country to legislate for net zero. It had the Climate Change Act was put in place, I think 2006, 2007, around then. And that set up the Climate Change Committee, and it's legislation that created a target to get 80% below 1990 levels of greenhouse gas emissions by a certain point in time, by 2050, I think it was at the time. And that got upgraded under Theresa May so that it was basically zero. Get it down to zero by 2050. And the whole net zero 2050 concept, if you like, basically came out of the UK. And New Zealand was, I think, closely behind or around the same time. And then other nations followed. So it became something that spread around the world. And I suppose the UK had confidence in that because by setting a target like that, it sets the tone, and then, it unleashes innovation to try to get to that point. The UK has been phasing out coal for a long time. It now doesn't have, I think, any coal at all in the power generation system. And it has an intention to stop developing domestic oil and gas and ultimately to phase oil and gas out of the system entirely, again, by 2050. And also, a lot of regulatory technology has been put into place to facilitate and incentivize the development of renewable energy, particularly solar and wind, and now more modernly, offshore wind and batteries. A lot of those instruments, if you like, that incentivize those types of technologies were developed in the United Kingdom. It's actually incredible how much of this type of regulatory instrument, regulatory technology comes out of the UK and specifically London. It's the hotbed of that type of activity. And it's something that I think that the UK can be extremely proud of, because when these concepts are put in place, for example, regulated asset-based methodologies, contracts for difference or CFDs, which you hear about, feed-in tariffs, renewable obligation certificates, all these mechanisms that are used all over the world. Ultimately, they've come out of the UK. Even the emissions trading scheme, that's famous around Europe, that came out of the UK emission trading scheme, spread to Europe, and sort of then came back. All these things and these types of instruments, they enable technologies that might not otherwise be fully financeable or bankable, enables them to happen. So it advances them. The UK has been doing a lot of that. And as a consequence, there is now a lot of renewable energy in the mix in the United Kingdom, solar, wind, increasingly batteries. So on some days when the sun's shining and the wind's blowing, you can have almost the entire power system comprised of renewable energy. The problem is those days when that doesn't happen. And that's really the rub of renewables, is that because energy is a service, it's a service that is expected 24/7, 365 whenever you hit the switch. You need to build systems that don't just operate when the sun shines and the wind blows, but actually they're all the time. And that's hard. It's hard with renewables. And so you've got to have backup systems in place. So the UK, there's about 20% nuclear in the UK, but it's effectively a renewable system backed up by gas-fired power, so that when there's not enough renewable energy being generated, you switch on the gas. And over time, you have to have enough gas to run the whole system, just in case there's no wind and no sun. But over time, we can reduce the amount of gas by having more batteries and other forms of energy storage. and you should not have to use too much fuel over time. So actually by 2030, which is only 5 years away, the UK wants to have a situation where 95% of the energy generated is coming from renewable sources or nuclear. You can include that as carbon free. And then it's only 5% coming from gas-fired power. That's a bit of a, how would you say that? That's an intention. It may not happen, but that's the program that government's on. So the UK is really trying to go first, trying to lead. And ultimately, when it cracks all of the sort of puzzles it needs to crack to get to that point, it has something to export to the world, which is a methodology and a system for having most of your power system provided from renewable sources. So it's quite incredible. It's something to be proud of. It's not well known, but that is what's happening in the UK.
Yeah, I think it is, as you say, really is something to be proud of. I do think it has been tough on the UK to lead
Yeah.
in that way. It was perhaps overambitious in some ways in terms of timescales. However, someone has to lead, and as you say, the regulatory expertise lies in the UK to enable this, and also the will to be seen as a world leader in this space. And especially moving away from North Sea oil and all of that kind of older technologies. It's been tough. I think we've faced very, very expensive fuel price in the UK, probably as a consequence of all of this. And obviously, due to so many different things going on, such as Brexit and those wars that you mentioned, it was kind of a perfect storm of so many different things that have caused these prices to escalate. And I think
Yeah.
ordinary people have genuinely felt the brunt of this. It is a pain that is necessary for the long term.
Yeah, it has a shadow. It has a shadow, definitely. Always these good intentions always have a shadow. One of the shadows that's being cast probably is over the North Sea. I personally find that a bit unnecessary because at the end of the day, the UK, when you add power into transportation and heating and then industry, so if you look at the entire energy system that backs up the whole economy in the United Kingdom, it's still almost 80% runoff oil and gas. Okay. The whole system, when you look at the fact that almost the entire heating system is gas, almost the entire transportation system is conventional cars. And so we're going to be living with oil and gas in the United Kingdom for a very, very long time. And we have a domestic source of hydrocarbons from the North Sea. And if you look at Aberdeen, Houston, Perth, Australia, they're probably the major oil and gas centres in the world. If you've ever walked down Union Street in Aberdeen, you go to the port, you see the activity, bustling centre, a lot of people on the ground there in the industry doing incredible work, incredible engineering work, commercial work, legal work, technical work, and all that. And then everyone that services the personnel that are directly involved in the industry. You're talking about a lot of jobs, really high quality jobs, and a wonderful town in Aberdeen. The way the UK government is, let's say, taxing the profits of the companies in the industry and then also making it difficult for them to do further work, it puts a huge burden on the people of Aberdeen and the associated people that are supporting the industry. And sometimes I question how necessary all of that is, given the role that oil and gas plays in the UK economy. And then globally, the global energy system is 86% fossil fuels. It's 86% oil, gas, and coal. Again, it's going to be here for a long time. And so for me, the real thing we should all be trying to focus on in the UK, especially in other leading nations, how do we clean up oil and gas? How do we make it as clean as possible? What technologies can we use? What engineering solutions can we use? Get rid of the methane emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, etc. Accepting that we're going to have it for a long time. So I want things to evolve. I want things to get more sophisticated. I want the industry to be protected in the UK so that the UK can maintain its position as a leading nation in oil and gas. Because if we don't, then we lose that capability, lose the technology, and you can actually expect emissions to go up from that part of the sector, which we shouldn't be having. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be too political on this channel, but I don't think it really is political. It's just a reality that we need to kind of accept. I mean, so I quite like stepping into that space a little bit and helping the companies up there. So basically, I think the UK can lead on clean power, can also lead on clean oil and gas. And I think things are going to start evolving more in that direction. But I just wanted to mention that because it's a point that's quite important to me. And it's an area where I have been spending quite a lot of time over the last few years because we're very active in the North Sea at the firm.
And this move towards AI and the incredible power consumption is not helping us to save on
No.
energy.
Quite the contrary, Lara. It is unbelievable, actually, what it's doing to energy demand. Really, the limiting factor on the continued, how would you say, storage and consumption of data and the utilization of AI, the limiting factor is energy. They're really running up against this in some of the American states. And we're starting to see it over here as well and in other Western nations. But it's not just a Western issue. This is global. And, you just need to think about your own interactions with AI. Some of us are more advanced than others maybe in how we're using it. But in general, the usage is just going up and up and up month on month, both in terms of how much time we're individually spending utilizing it, but also the things we're using it for. I mean, the latest thing really is these AI companions. And I don't know how many people out there listening to your podcast have dabbled in this space, but I predict that within 6 to 12 months, a lot of people are going to have AI companions. Because if you have dabbled with it, you start to see what it is and you see how useful it is. Now, I don't know how much energy these things use or the other AI sort of functions use, but the total amount that we're going to need to power all these use cases is just enormous. And we're not ready for it. And we're seeing a huge amount of activity in the investment space, particularly with private capital, trying to get into this and all the things that feed it. So there's an enormous amount of deal activity and investment going on. I mean, you see some of the headlines, there were a number of deals announced. They were mega billion deals. I mean, even you see individual companies pledging like $500 billion into this space. And so on the one hand, it's very exciting. On the other, it's very challenging, but it's stimulating an enormous amount of activity in terms of greenfield infrastructure, mergers and acquisitions, financings, et cetera, et cetera. So it's keeping a lot of people very busy.
It certainly is. And every conversation has AI in it, doesn't it? So in terms of your use of AI in your work on a daily basis, how are you using AI with your team?
Yeah. Well, we've incorporated Copilot into all of our major applications. And so it's kind of there with you now all the time, making all sorts of suggestions for what you should be doing better, some of which you ignore and some of which maybe you follow. But it's just a slow sort of integration or almost like invasion into our working space. And then there's more intentional and deliberate usages like technologies like Harvey in the legal world, where you can automate a lot of processes and where you can actually, if your prompting is good enough, you can get it to produce some very high quality pieces of legal work. It does come down to the quality of the prompting. And so there's a lot of training going on within the firm to make sure people are able to interact with it. Because you always hear, I think sometimes you hear when people maybe don't know really quite how to use it, they always talk about the problem of hallucinations and the problem of the fact that the AI will ultimately, if it needs to, just make stuff up. But if you know your subject area well enough yourself and you treat the AI like with the level of respect you should, given where it's at right now, and you look for the mistakes and you keep prodding and prompting to get it to the right place, actually can be very, very helpful across a whole range of applications. It's really about the training of the people interacting with it. And also using it regularly. Like if you've used AI 6 to 12 months ago and you've reached a conclusion on it, the fact is the AI has moved on now. It's smarter. It's faster. It's probably cheaper. It's just evolving at such a pace. I mean, we, as human beings, we're not used to things moving so quickly and changing so rapidly. So it is quite shocking. But you've got to stay in touch with it. You've got to interact with it regularly and keep doing the training. What we're doing now at groups within the firm is we're getting people to sort of say, how have they used it? And then share the experience with each other so we can all kind of evolve together and help each other. But I don't think there's any like one textbook or playbook. The key is that you're curious as a user and you keep asking questions and you keep interacting with it. And then I think, you'll be okay. But yeah, it's quite a scary thing, isn't it? There's a lot of fear out there, I think, about it. I mean, but you can't do anything about it. I think it's here to stay as long as you can have enough energy to power it. But there will be some crunches. I mean, mark my words, there'll be crunches around the world where the energy consumption and usage of this technology is going to start to compete with some very important functions in our society.
Do you think that that'll mean certain developing nations will fall even further behind than they are because of the energy issues?
Maybe, because this AI technology is being developed in only a small number of countries. And if relations were slightly better around the world, country to country, it might be that we could all get together and say, okay, maybe slow down a little. Do we really want this? But unfortunately, given where things are at, and given that the two main development centers for AI are the US and China, I do not see this slowing down. I see it just going further and further ahead. And as it moves further and further ahead, the fact is the countries that have the tech and the people that have the tech, the companies, the users, they're just going to move ahead of everyone else. Because, you can have armies of agents doing work for you that would ordinarily have to be done by human beings, and the fact is these agents are not going to cost anywhere near the cost of paying people, and they'll be faster and better. And so, yeah, I think that we will start to see more of a disconnect. And it's important that developing nations work out a way to stay on board and stay up to date. Otherwise, they're just consumers of the service, basically.
I've had a couple of inquiries recently from young people looking at switching career into law.
Yeah.
What would you advise them these days, given what we're seeing with AI?
Yeah. Well, still go for it. Definitely. I wouldn't be put off at all. I think as a little side hustle or side project, just work out how you can use AI to improve what you're doing. Because I do this to my kids, like you're not competing with AI, you're competing with people that know how to use it. And so the real advantage now is how to integrate it into what you're doing every day. So don't be scared of it. Don't freeze in the face of it. Stare into the abyss and learn about it so that you're not uncomfortable and you're at least ahead of some of the others maybe that you're competing with. Because it is competitive. Of course, it's competitive. It's competitive to get into a law firm. And once you're in a law firm, it's competitive to hold your place. And then in any event, you're out there competing with other law firms for clients. And so knowing your way around this stuff is crucial. And sometimes the younger people anyway, Lara, they can learn it a lot quicker than I can. And so, use your youth to your advantage. You should be a bit more tech savvy probably anyway than the likes of me.
So, thinking about your leadership style 5 years ago, has it changed in any way?
I don't know. I've been in the position I've been in for that whole period. And so I've been trying the whole time to spread the load of leadership and distribute it to a leadership team. And so I've got regional leaders and trying to empower others to sort of take more and more of the leadership. But I think I've stayed very similar. I would have thought, authentic. And that's always been my style. I just think that if you can show up in a consistent way, in a way that's sort of true to your principles and you're honest with people, all that sort of thing, then it's going to work. I haven't really changed any aspect of that over the last 5 years. I think in a way though, because we've been doing this for so long now, and that vision I talked about on your last podcast, energize the world, lead the transition, support the change. It's held. It's held for that whole time. And also the way we have gone with our client program and the leadership of different client accounts, the way we handle our conflicts, the way we push campaigns, and the way we encourage collaboration. It's all been the same. But what it's produced over time is a system that's almost self-activating. And I think that's the end point of leadership almost, is when the principles you've put in place lead to people knowing what they're supposed to do in the moment without the leader anywhere near them, and they self-activate towards the goal. And I think there's been a lot of that around the firm. And so the results just keep improving, almost, I'd say, in a linear fashion. Our conventional energy business has held pretty steady over the last 5 years, which is an achievement of itself, by the way, because many firms, I think, have stepped away from the conventional energy, oil and gas, etc., because maybe seen as a little controversial, not very popular with the young, kind of unsexy, the wrong side of the culture, etc., etc. Whereas the stats I've said previously let you know that it actually is still the massive core of the British energy system, the global energy system. So I don't think it was wise to step away from that. But our business held pretty steady in that area. But our energy transition business has gone through the roof. And that's a combination of all the efforts of our people around the world, collaborating around clients, collaborating around topics and campaigns, working together to chase the work. I'm honestly very proud of the way the firm's been able to do that. The big thing for us now is the United States, but I think the leadership model is solid. It's because it is based on an authentic leadership style. And I think that survives the test of time. And if you have a strategy, again, which is based on reality, and you use the expertise you have in an industry to set the strategy, thinking about the future, you try to make it robust and resilient. And I think we've benefited from that. The deep sector experience probably has allowed us to put in place a strategy which has lasted. Because if you're changing strategy all the time, you probably do need to be very, very active as leaders and constantly updating and changing, and it was going to take a lot of your time. But if it's robust and it stays and you constantly repeat what you need to repeat, you get to self-activation, which I really think is where this firm's at.
It sounds like you played the long game and that's
Yeah.
paying off, and that consistency is key. So thinking about the clients that you work with and the way that they have changed the way they work using AI, using panel firms, etc. What are your business development activities these days that you find most effective?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think AI has changed things that much yet, but it clearly, we're getting asked more and more, how are you going to use AI to help us? And it may affect as well the way in which work's briefed out. Some things may not be being briefed out anymore. But I suppose as a firm, our mission is to help clients with the biggest problems they have globally, the biggest opportunities they have globally. So we've kept trying to push and push for those, and those things change over time. We noticed a massive shift towards the United States, for example, over the last 5 years, as Biden brought in the Inflation Reduction Act and created all these incentives for clean energy projects, et cetera, et cetera. We noticed our clients wanting us to be more and more aware and more helpful to them in the United States for the purpose of them going in and dealing with their issues there, but also so that we can create a compare and contrast exercise for them to help them understand, well, how is it different to the UK? How is it different to Australia, Singapore, et cetera, et cetera? We found we weren't that able to do that because our presence there was too small. And over time, that's motivated us to do what we're doing now by merging with Kramer and continuing, the pathway. So there's been a big change there in terms of what the clients are after. Also, the things they've been investing in have been changing fundamentally. We do a lot of work with BP and have done over the last 5 years, and obviously more than that. But the things they're looking to buy, similar to some of the other oil and gas companies, just changed fundamentally. It's kind of swung back a bit maybe towards their traditional business, but there was a period there where they were going in and doing transactions in spaces that they'd never done before, which is good for us in a way because they will reach out to their trusted firms in those moments and get you to go in and do those things. But yeah, we've got to demonstrate that we've got the capabilities to be able to handle those new things, that we've got the analogous experience, analogous credentials. So for example, if it's a green hydrogen project, you need to show you've got liquefied natural gas and that you've got power, renewables, all the components, so you can then go and do that project. But then after you've done one or two of them, it's like, okay, we've done one or two of them, we can do the third or fourth. So it's thinking like that. But yeah, it's become a big theme, I think, in the last 6, 12 months in particular. And this idea that we're going to save them money by utilizing it in a certain way.
So for senior juniors looking to progress into partnership, what's your advice to them at the moment?
I mean, you've got to attach yourself to an area that's growing fundamentally in terms of the business that you're in. I mean, some people will be just in straight out M&A, straight out finance, straight out disputes. But of course, it's no surprise. I would advocate adding to that with a sector focus, because the sector focus that's what's distinctive out there in the market. Because if you're just a straight up standard M&A lawyer and you're going into M&A in a particular sector, so it could be pharma sector, tech sector, or energy sector, if you're competing with someone who has that sector experience, you'd have to be a very, very good M&A lawyer or have an amazing relationship with that client not to get beaten by the person who's got that additional layer of experience. And I think things have just evolved, things have moved on, and now there's a strong expectation on the part of the clients, especially the clients we act for, that you've got the practice skill and you've got the sector. And I think some of these sectors are just getting so large. I mean, energy and infrastructure is huge, but within that, specializing in power or, oil and gas, decarbonisation, whatever, it gives you an edge. So I'm always encouraging people to try to think about underlying industries and layer that on top of your, of course, wonderful legal skills in the particular area. I mean, and looking ahead and trying to place yourself in a space that's growing. So at the moment, we already mentioned data centers. AI is a bit of a theme of what we're talking about, but connecting the dots maybe between the evolution of technology, evolution of energy, you can see a very abundant kind of field there to move into. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think anything's really changed that much in the advice I would give. You've obviously got to have a good business plan in addition to all the technical skills. And ideally, you're in a team that's growing, So I suppose if you said senior, junior, so maybe you're at a point where you're still maybe able to dictate where you put yourself. You've got to look for teams that are growing, teams that have the intention to grow, and get yourself in there as well. Because you can be the best lawyer in the world, but there's still got to be a business case for you to become a partner.
I do think there's a certain element of luck, finding yourself in a
Yeah.
team that's growing. But in the last episode, we really talked about mastery of your craft.
Hmm.
And I think that AI actually is going to present the most fantastic opportunity to have AI as your learning companion to teach you things that you would never have had access to before. So it's a great opportunity for those people with a learning mindset who can work hard to carve out time during the week to learn new things. And I think we need to really emphasize that actually effort is involved, that people do need to upskill, people need to use AI. It's such a fantastic opportunity to tap into all sorts of knowledge and have your own assistant helping you doing things. So I think it's a really, really exciting time. And we also talked about Ikigai last time.
Hmm.
So obviously that concept of aligning yourself with your passion, with your strengths and your purpose. But what if somebody is maybe 4 years qualified and they're kind of not really feeling it? So
Mm.
firstly, they definitely don't know their purpose, but also they're going, oh gosh, could I really see myself for the next 20, 30 years in this practice area, etc.? What would you do in that position?
Yeah, well, if that's happening to you, then you really need to have a good look within yourself to try and work out why. What is it that's not resonating with you? Because it's funny, you might just be sort of plowing along day by day, just doing the work, not thinking about it too consciously. But it's kind of amazing how your subconscious works and how it tries to communicate with you. It sounds weird, doesn't it? You're talking about one person, but these two sort of sides. But it's definitely there, and often this, your subconscious or your ego, if you like, will communicate with you through feelings and emotions and all that sort of thing. And I don't know, maybe as you go through life, you get a little bit better at tuning into that, and then maybe there are things you can do to get better at it and listen to yourself. Things like meditation and all those like slightly mystic practices. But it's definitely worth your while to try to tune into yourself and know thyself, as Socrates would say, and try to work out, why am I feeling like that? And if it could be the case that you're just not really resonating with the environment that you're in, it could be you're not resonating with the career choice or the private practice element of it. And so trying to maybe create some distance and space between yourself and your present environment would assist. That might mean taking a little bit of time off, or even going on a secondment or something like that. Just get out of the environment and then see what happens. And you'll probably find, if you do that, you'll get a better sense of what's going on and what the problem is, and then you'll have a chance to fix it. And obviously there are coaches out there you can speak to. Some of them are psychologists. They don't have to be psychologists, but they can often help you to unlock this sort of thing as well. But I'd say if you're out there and you're listening and you're not really feeling it at the moment in your present working environment, then do something about it, you know, and try to work out what the problem actually is. It might take you some time, but you know, you want to try to be happy in your environment, and you want to be trying to working in a space where your energy is aligned with the energy of the people around you and the work that you're doing.
Right. Before we end off the podcast, is there anything else you want to share with our audience in terms of advice or anything else that you'd like to say?
I always like this time of the year. It's funny. I mean, people who see me on LinkedIn, they probably see that I sometimes put out songs and things like that. And I often collaborate with a guy called Orel Tausig, who's the energy tax partner at HSF Kramer. And we work together all the time. But he plays the violin and I play the guitar. And we always enjoy this time of the year because we always perform at the retired partners Christmas lunch, the alumni lunch. And I suppose the point there is I've always maintained my hobby. I have a number of hobbies, but that's one of them. And I can't stress the importance enough of maintaining that sense of fun in your life. I know the law is hard, it can be brutal, but it's good to have an outlet. It's good to have something that you really enjoy and that gives you pleasure and just makes you laugh out loud. And for me, it's that, and I love it. And I just, yeah, encourage everyone to just don't give up those things, hold on to them, and don't be embarrassed about it. And don't think that it's a waste of time or that or you don't have time for it. Make time for it. that's my message perhaps is, pursue your hobbies and love them.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have joy in your life, little things every day that you can do that bring you joy. And whether that's a hobby or just being kind to those around you and to yourself. So if people want to get in touch with you, Lewis, what's the best way?
Probably LinkedIn, easy to find. And there's that message function that means you can send anyone anything at any time these days. It's actually amazing if you think about it. So yeah, by all means, just drop me a comment on LinkedIn or a message or whatever. I'm always open to help people who need it.
That's really great to hear. So thank you so much for your time today, Lewis. It's been good
Pleasure.
to see you.
Pleasure. Okay, thanks, Lara.